Hey guys, tonight we are building for eternity. The storm is washing the gargoyles outside, but in here the dust is settling and the lines are straight. We are stepping into the medieval stonemason's large. We are going to carve a block of the earth into a piece of heaven. This is a story about geometry, patience, and the sound of the chisel. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Now, breathe in the scent of dry stone, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The rain begins at vespers, when the light is fading and the Cathedral of Our Lady still reaches only halfway to heaven. You can hear it first on the slate roofs of the town below, a gentle percussion that builds into a steady drumming. Then it finds the canvas tops stretched over the unfinished walls, creating a deeper, softer sound. But here, in the mason's large, the rain is muffled, absorbed by something older and quieter. The stone dust has settled on every surface like a fine snow. It coats the wooden beams overhead, the windowsills, the surface of the workbenches. When the rain strikes the roof above, the sound is swallowed by this white coating, this dust of creation that hangs in the air and rests on every horizontal plane. The large is a long wooden structure built against the north side of the cathedral itself, sheltered by the completed portion of the nave. It smells of oak and limestone, of wet wool and cold iron. The walls are vertical planks, fitted tightly but not perfectly, so thin lines of grey light show through in places. During the day, these gaps make the interior glow with a soft, diffused illumination. Now, as evening settles, they are dark seams in the wood, and the light comes only from the two braziers burning at either end of the long room, and from the candles on the drafting table. You step inside and close the heavy door behind you. The rain becomes even quieter. Your footsteps on the wooden floor release small clouds of dust that rise and hang suspended in the candlelight. Everything is pale. The dust has turned the world into a study in whites and greys. Even the shadows seem softer here, as if the darkness itself has been coated with limestone powder. There are 6 workbenches arranged in 2 rows down the center of the large. Each bench is made of thick oak planks, their surfaces worn smooth by decades of use, but now covered in the ever-present dust. The benches are perhaps 8 feet long and 3 feet wide, standing at a height that allows a man to work without bending his back excessively. Above each bench, tools hang from wooden pegs driven into the rafters. Even these tools, the iron chisels and the wooden mallets, have a coating of white dust. Your bench is the second on the left. You have worked here for 6 years, since you were 14 years old, since the day you left your father's farm and bound yourself as an apprentice to Master Guillaume. The bench has become as familiar to you as your own hands. You know the location of every tool, every groove worn into the oak surface, every candle stub stuck in its own wax on the edges of the workspace. But tonight, before you approach your bench, before you pick up your tools, you stand in the center of the large and simply breathe. The air tastes of stone. It is a dry taste, chalky and clean, with a faint mineral sharpness that catches at the back of your throat. This is the taste of limestone, of the white stone that was cut from the quarries 5 miles to the north and brought here in ox carts, massive blocks weighing half a ton or more, each one a piece of the earth that will be transformed into a piece of the cathedral. The dust in the air is not merely dirt. It is the substance of transformation. Every particle floating in the candlelight represents a piece of stone that has been removed, carved away, reduced from rough block to finished form. The masons create this dust with every strike of the chisel. It rises from the benches in small clouds. It settles on your hair, your shoulders, your eyelashes. By the end of a day's work, you are coated in it, transformed into a ghost of yourself, a white figure moving through a white world. You breathe it in. You have been breathing it in for 6 years. It is in your lungs, in your blood. You are becoming stone yourself, slowly, particle by particle. This does not frighten you. It feels like a kind of communion, a physical joining with the material you shape. The cathedral is being built not just by your hands, but by your breath, by the very substance of your body mingling with the substance of the stone. The rain continues its quiet drumming overhead. You walk to your bench. The stone is already there, waiting. It arrived yesterday afternoon, delivered by the quarrymen and lifted onto the bench by 4 of the laborers using wooden poles and rope. It is a block of limestone, rectangular, roughly 4 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 18 inches thick. It weighs perhaps 600 pounds. It sits on the bench like a sleeping animal, pale and patient. You reach out and place your hand on its surface. The stone is cold. This is the first thing you always notice. Even in summer, even when the sun has been beating on the limestone all day, it remains cool to the touch. Now, in autumn, with the rain falling and the evening air growing chill, the stone is deeply cold. The cold travels from your fingertips up through your hand, into your wrist and forearm. It is a clean cold, not unpleasant. It makes you alert. The surface of the block is rough. The quarrymen have cut it with their big saws, leaving behind a texture of parallel grooves. You can feel these grooves under your palm. Between them, the stone has a slightly granular feel, like very fine sand compressed into solidity. This is the structure of limestone. It is made of tiny shells, the compressed remains of ancient sea creatures that lived when this land was covered by ocean. You cannot see these shells without a close examination, but you know they are there. Master Guillaume has shown you. Under magnification, the limestone reveals itself to be a cemetery, a deposit of millions upon millions of tiny deaths, compressed by weight and time into this white stone. You move your hand across the surface, exploring it. The stone is not uniformly cold. There are slight variations in temperature, places where the stone seems fractionally warmer or cooler. These variations correspond to differences in density in the structure of the stone itself. A good mason learns to read these differences. They tell you where the stone will cut easily and where it will resist the chisel. They tell you where there might be a hidden crack or a pocket of softer material. Your hand is learning to read the stone the way a priest reads scripture. The smell of the limestone is strongest when you lean close to it. It is a dry smell, chalky and ancient. It smells like caves, like the deep places of the earth where water has carved passages through rock over centuries. It smells like bones, like the white stones in the graveyard that have weathered for generations. There is no sweetness in this smell, no hint of growing things. It is the smell of mineral patience, of time measured in layers of sediment, of water dripping in darkness. You straighten and look at the block in the candlelight. The limestone is not pure white. It has variations in color, subtle shifts in tone from cream to pale gray. There are veins running through it, thin lines of slightly darker material. These veins are mineral deposits, places where water once flowed through cracks in the stone, leaving behind traces of iron or other elements. You examine these veins carefully. They can be beautiful, adding character to the finished work, but they can also be weak points where the stone might crack unexpectedly. This block will become a section of the arcade, one of the pillars that will support the weight of the upper walls. Master Guillaume has already drafted the design. It is a simple cylindrical form, but with a capital at the top, a decorated crown where the pillar will meet the arch above. Your task is to rough out the basic shape, to transform this rectangular block into a cylinder. The more skilled masons will then refine it, adding the subtle curves and the detailed carving of the capital. But first, you must prepare. You cannot simply begin striking the stone with chisel and mallet. That would be the action of a quarryman, not a mason. A mason works with knowledge, with geometry, with the invisible patterns that govern how stone can be shaped and how a building can stand. Before you touch the stone with a cutting tool, you must understand it. You must measure it, mark it, and plan your approach. You turn to the tool rack behind your bench. The tools hang in careful order, each in its designated place. This is one of the first lessons Master Guillaume taught you. A mason's tools are his sacred implements. They must be kept sharp, clean, and organized. To lose a tool or to let it fall into disrepair is a sign of disrespect, not just to the craft, but to the stone itself. The chisels hang in a row, their iron heads gleaming dully in the candlelight, their wooden handles worn smooth by countless hands. There are perhaps 20 chisels on your rack, each with a different cutting edge. Some are wide and flat, used for removing large amounts of stone quickly. Others are narrow and pointed, designed for delicate work, for carving into corners and creating fine details. Still others have toothed edges, like a comb, used for creating texture or for initial roughing work. You know each chisel by touch. In the dim light of winter mornings, when you arrive at the lodge before dawn, you can select the right tool without seeing it, simply by reaching out and feeling the shape of the handle, the weight of the iron head. Each chisel has its own personality, its own way of biting into the stone. Some cut aggressively, taking large chips. Others whisper across the surface, removing stone in fine dust. Learning these personalities has taken years. Even now, you are still learning. Beside the chisels hangs the mallet. It is not a large tool, perhaps 14 inches long, but it is heavy. The head is made of crabapple wood, one of the densest and hardest woods available. Crabapple does not split or crack under the repeated impact of striking iron. It absorbs the shock and delivers it through the chisel into the stone. The handle is ash, chosen for its flexibility and strength. The whole tool has been shaped by the lodge's carpenter, then finished by you, sanded smooth and rubbed with linseed oil until it gleams. The weight of the mallet in your hand is comforting. It is a balanced weight, heavy enough to drive the chisel but not so heavy that it tires your arm after an hour of work. You have learned the rhythm of the mallet. It is not a frantic striking, not a hammering. It is a steady, measured percussion. Strike, pause, shift the chisel, strike, pause. The rhythm becomes meditative. After the first hour, you no longer think about it. Your arm moves of its own accord, and your mind floats in a space between the stone and the pattern you are creating. But you are not ready for the chisel and mallet yet. First, there are the measuring tools. These hang on a separate rack, set apart from the cutting tools as if to emphasize their importance. There is the square, a simple L-shaped piece of iron that allows you to verify right angles to ensure that edges are true and surfaces are flat. There is the compass, made of iron with a central pivot and two legs that can be adjusted to any radius. There is the straight edge, a long iron bar that has been ground and polished until it is perfectly flat, used to check the alignment of surfaces. These tools represent something fundamental. They represent geometry, the hidden mathematics that governs the physical world. Master Guillaume speaks of geometry with reverence. He calls it the language of God, the pattern underlying all creation. When you use the compass to draw a circle, you are not merely making a shape. You are manifesting a perfect form, a form that exists in the realm of ideas before it exists in the physical world. The circle you draw is an imperfect copy of the perfect circle that exists in the mind of the divine. This is difficult to understand, and Master Guillaume knows it. He does not expect the apprentices to grasp it immediately, but he repeats these lessons, and slowly, over months and years, they begin to make sense. You have started to see the patterns. You have started to understand that the cathedral is not just a building. It is a three-dimensional expression of geometric principles. Every arch, every vault, every pillar exists in precise relationship to every other element. Change one measurement, alter one angle, and the entire structure could collapse. You take the compass from its hook. It is cool in your hand, smooth and precise. The pivot is tight enough to hold any setting, but not so tight that you cannot adjust it. You have learned to care for this tool with particular attention. Any looseness in the pivot, anywhere in the threads that adjust the legs, and your measurements will be inaccurate. Inaccurate measurements lead to poor work, and poor work in a cathedral is not merely aesthetic failure. It is structural danger. You also take the square and a length of string that has been soaked in red ochre. This string is a marking tool. When stretched tight across a surface and then snapped, it leaves a perfectly straight line. This technique is ancient. The Egyptians used it to lay out the foundations of their temples. Now you use it to mark the stone. But before marking anything, you must consult the design. You walk to the far end of the lodge, where Master Guillaume's drafting table stands. This table is larger than the workbenches, perhaps 10 feet long and 6 feet wide. Its surface is covered with white plaster, smoothed and polished until it is almost glass-like. This is the tracing floor, though it is a table rather than a floor, raised to a comfortable working height. On this white surface, Master Guillaume draws the designs for every element of the cathedral. He uses the compass, the square, and a sharp stylus to scratch lines into the plaster. The drawings are not small sketches. They are full-scale templates, precise representations of the actual pieces that will be carved. When you need to cut a stone, you come to this table and study the design, taking measurements directly from the full-scale drawing. Tonight, the table is covered with circular patterns. These are the designs for the pillar capitals, the decorated tops of the columns. The patterns are based on a geometric figure that Master Guillaume calls the flower of life. You stand at the edge of the table and look down at these overlapping circles. The flower of life begins with a single circle. From the center of that circle, you draw 6 more circles, each one passing through the center of the original circle, arranged like the petals of a flower. Where these circles overlap, they create a pattern of curved triangular shapes. From this basic pattern, you can generate more circles, creating an expanding web of overlapping forms. The pattern grows outward, limited only by the size of your drawing surface. Master Guillaume has drawn this pattern many times, explaining it to the apprentices during the winter months when outdoor work is impossible and the lodge becomes a school. He traces the circles with his compass, his movements precise and practiced. As the pattern emerges, he points out the relationships between the circles. He shows how every circle is connected to every other circle, how the pattern contains within itself the proportions of the square root of 2 and the square root of 3, how it encodes the relationships between diameter and circumference. He tells you that this pattern appears in nature. You can see it in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, in the structure of honeycombs, in the way certain crystals grow. The pattern is fundamental to creation itself. By using it in the cathedral, the masons are aligning their work with the underlying order of the universe. The building becomes more than a shelter. It becomes a reflection of cosmic harmony. You do not fully understand all of this, but you trust Master Guillaume. You have seen the buildings that ignore these principles. They look wrong. Even a peasant who knows nothing of geometry can sense when proportions are off, when a building lacks harmony. But a cathedral built according to geometric principles has a different quality. It feels right. It feels like it belongs in the world, like it has grown from the earth rather than being merely placed upon it. You study the pattern on the tracing floor. The design for your pillar capital is here, drawn in red ochre over the white plaster. The capital will have 8 curved lobes, each one corresponding to a section of the flower of life pattern. Between the lobes, there will be carved leaves, simple forms that echo the botanical origins of the geometric pattern. The whole design is perhaps 18 inches in diameter, sized to sit atop the cylindrical pillar shaft. You take measurements from the design using the compass. You open the compass legs to match the radius of the main circle, then lift the compass carefully, preserving the setting. You return to your bench with these measurements held in the iron legs of the tool. This is how knowledge is transferred from the design to the stone. The compass becomes a bridge between the ideal and the real. Back at your bench, you set the compass on the top surface of the limestone block. You place the pivot point near the center and rotate the compass, scratching a circle into the rough stone. The iron leg of the compass makes a thin, bright line on the gray surface. The circle emerges, perfect despite the roughness of the stone. This is the first mark, the first imposition of geometric order onto raw material. You make more marks, using the square to find the center lines, using the compass to step off divisions along the circumference. Each mark is deliberate. There is no hurry. Hasty marking leads to errors, and errors in stone cannot be easily corrected. Once you cut away too much material, it is gone forever. The stone does not forgive. The process of marking takes perhaps half an hour. When you finish, the top surface of the block is covered with a web of lines. These lines describe the cylinder that will emerge from the rectangular block. They show where to cut, how deep to go, what to preserve. The lines transform the block from inert matter into potential. Now, when you look at it, you can see through the current surface to the form hidden within. The cylinder is already there, waiting. Your task is simply to remove everything that is not the cylinder. Before you begin cutting, you need one more thing. You need a template for the side profile. The cylinder is not perfectly uniform. It has a slight taper, growing fractionally narrower as it rises. This taper is intentional, designed to create a sense of upward movement to make the pillar seem to grow rather than merely stand. Additionally, the cylinder will have a series of horizontal bands carved into it at regular intervals, purely decorative elements that break up the vertical line and add visual interest. The template for this profile must be cut from wood. You go to the rack where the wooden boards are stored. These are thin planks of oak, perhaps a quarter-inch thick, chosen for their stability and fine grain. You select a board that is large enough to contain the profile you need, perhaps 3 feet long and 18 inches wide. You carry the board to a smaller work table near one of the braziers. Here, there is better light and a clear space to work. You lay the board flat and use the square and compass to draw the profile directly onto the wood. This drawing must be precise. The template will be used repeatedly, placed against the stone as a guide while you cut. Any error in the template will be reproduced in the stone. You draw slowly, checking each line twice before moving to the next. The profile emerges on the pale oak surface. A long, straight line represents the main shaft of the cylinder. At the top, the line curves outward slightly, forming the beginnings of the capital. Lower down, you mark the positions of the horizontal bands, spacing them according to the proportions Master Guillaume has specified. When the drawing is complete, you take a small saw from the tool rack. This saw is different from the large saws used by carpenters. It has a thin, fine blade designed for detail work. You begin to cut along the lines you have drawn, removing the waste wood. The saw makes a soft, rhythmic sound, a whisper compared to the harsh rasp of a saw cutting green timber. The dry oak releases a faint smell, woody and clean. Cutting the template takes time. You cannot hurry. The blade must follow the lines exactly. Any deviation will create a bump or hollow in the template edge, and this imperfection will transfer to the stone. You work by candlelight, pausing frequently to check your progress, to brush away the sawdust, to verify that the blade is following the line. Outside, the rain has not lessened. If anything, it has grown heavier. You can hear it now as a steady roar on the roof, punctuated by the occasional louder drumming when the wind drives a gust against the wooden walls. But inside the lodge, the atmosphere remains quiet and focused. The sound of the saw is meditative. Your breathing synchronizes with the motion of your arm. Draw the saw back, push it forward. Draw back, push forward. The rhythm is steady, unchanging, a physical manifestation of patience. After perhaps an hour, the template is cut. You set down the saw and pick up the wooden profile, holding it up to the candlelight to inspect the edge. The cut is smooth and true. You run your finger along it, feeling for any irregularities. There are none. The template is ready. You return to your bench with the template in hand. Now you can begin the actual work of shaping the stone. You lay the template against the side of the limestone block, holding it in place while you trace along its edge with a piece of charcoal. The charcoal leaves a black line on the white stone, a stark contrast that is easy to see even in dim light. You move the template to the opposite side of the block and repeat the process, then to each end. By the time you finish, the block is marked with a network of lines, black charcoal on white limestone. These lines define the boundary between what will remain and what must be removed. Everything outside these lines is waste. Everything inside is the emerging pillar. You step back and look at the marked block. This moment is significant. The stone has been measured, understood, and marked. The geometry has been applied. Now comes the physical labor, the transformation of potential into actual. You are ready to pick up the chisel and mallet. You are ready to begin carving. But you pause. This is another lesson from Master Guillaume. Do not begin cutting when you are tired. Do not begin when your mind is elsewhere. The stone requires your full attention. It requires respect. You must come to it fresh, focused, aware. You check the position of the candles around your bench. There are 4 of them, placed to illuminate the stone from different angles. This prevents harsh shadows that could hide errors in the work. The candles are new, thick tallow cylinders that will burn for hours. Their light is warm and steady. You check your tools one more time. You select a wide, flat chisel for the initial roughing work. This chisel is perhaps 2 inches wide at the cutting edge, heavy and robust. It is designed to remove large amounts of stone quickly. You examine the edge in the candlelight. It is sharp, freshly ground this morning on the large's whetstone. A dull chisel does not cut cleanly. It crushes the stone, creating rough, crumbly edges. A sharp chisel slices through the limestone, leaving smooth surfaces. You take the mallet in your right hand and the chisel in your left. This is the standard grip, at least for a right-handed mason. The mallet will do the striking. The left hand will guide the chisel, positioning it precisely and absorbing some of the impact to prevent the tool from bouncing or skittering across the stone. You position yourself at the bench, standing at a comfortable distance, your feet planted firmly on the floor. Your body is balanced. This is important. You will be striking hundreds of times, perhaps thousands, before this work is complete. Poor stance leads to fatigue, to sore muscles, to loss of precision. You place the chisel against the stone at the edge of one of the charcoal lines, angled slightly downward. The cutting edge touches the limestone at a point perhaps half an inch outside the marked line. You will not cut directly to the line. That would be dangerous. One misstrike, one unexpected flaw in the stone, and you could cut into the material that must be preserved. Instead, you will rough out the form, leaving a margin of safety, and then refine the surface in later passes. You raise the mallet and strike. The impact is solid, controlled. The chisel bites into the stone, and a chip of limestone flies free. It is a small chip, perhaps the size of your thumbnail, white and angular. It strikes the floor with a tiny clicking sound and disappears into the dust. You strike again, another chip, and again. The rhythm begins to establish itself. Strike, reposition the chisel, strike, reposition. The sound fills the large, a steady percussion that blends with the sound of the rain. The chisel rings against the stone, a clear, sharp note. The mallet thumps a deeper sound. Together they create a rhythm that is almost musical. Dust begins to rise from the stone. With each strike, particles of limestone are released into the air. They catch the candlelight, glowing briefly before settling. The white cloud around your bench grows thicker. You breathe it in. You taste it. The dust coats your hands, your arms, your face. You are disappearing into the work, becoming part of the transformation. You work your way along the edge of the block, removing the waste material in layers. The chisel follows the contour of the charcoal line, staying outside it by that safe margin. Chips of stone accumulate on the bench, on the floor, in the folds of your leather apron. Some chips are large, the size of walnuts. Others are mere fragments, splinters, and dust. Each one represents a piece of the rectangle being removed, the cylinder being revealed. The physical sensation of carving is complex. There is the impact transmitted through the chisel into your left hand, a shock that travels up your arm with each strike. There is the resistance of the stone, sometimes firm and even, sometimes suddenly soft, where you encounter a pocket of less dense material. There is the heat building in your muscles, the exertion of controlled strength. And there is the feedback of sound, the way the ring of the chisel changes pitch depending on the depth of the cut and the density of the stone. You learn to read all these sensations simultaneously. They tell you how to adjust your angle, how hard to strike, where the stone will cooperate and where it will resist. This is the skill that cannot be taught directly. It must be learned through hours and days and months of practice until the knowledge lives in your body rather than your mind. After perhaps 20 minutes, you pause. Your left arm is starting to tire from absorbing the impacts. You set down the tools and flex your fingers, shaking out the tension. You look at your work. A section of the waste material has been removed, perhaps 6 inches long and 2 inches deep. The surface left behind is rough, covered with small ridges and hollows where the chisel has bitten in. This roughness is acceptable at this stage. Later, you will smooth it with finer chisels, and eventually with abrasive stones. You walk around the bench, examining the block from all sides. The work must progress evenly. If you remove too much material from one side before addressing the others, the block can become unbalanced, making it difficult to work and potentially causing cracks from uneven stress. You return to the bench and pick up the tools again, moving to a different side of the block. The rhythm resumes. Strike, reposition, strike. The rain continues overhead. The candles burn steadily. Time begins to lose its usual structure. There is no past, no future, only the present moment of the chisel meeting the stone. This is the meditative quality of the work that Master Guillaume speaks about. When you are fully engaged with the carving, when your attention is completely absorbed by the task, the ordinary concerns of life recede. You are not thinking about the cold, the rain, the upcoming harvest, the shortage of bread in the town market. You are not thinking at all in the usual sense. You are simply doing. You are the chisel, the stone, the form emerging. Subject and object merge into a single process of transformation. The limestone continues to yield. Chips fall away. The waste pile on the floor grows. Your bench becomes an island of white dust in the dim large. The stone is changing shape, slowly but inevitably. The sharp rectangular corners are disappearing, being replaced by rough curved surfaces. The cylinder is beginning to emerge. You work for another hour, pausing only occasionally to rest your arms or to relight a candle that has burned low. The physical labor is demanding but not exhausting. You have built up strength and endurance over 6 years of apprenticeship. Your arms and shoulders are corded with muscle. Your hands are calloused and strong. But you have also learned the importance of pacing, of not pushing yourself to the point of fatigue where precision suffers. Master Guillaume has told you stories of masons who worked too hard, too fast, driven by pride or impatience or the pressure of a deadline. Their work suffered. They made mistakes. In the worst cases, they injured themselves, crushing fingers between mallet and chisel or causing the stone to crack in ways that ruined weeks of effort. The lesson is clear. The stone will not be hurried. It has waited millions of years in the earth. It can wait for you to work at the proper pace. You set down your tools and step back to assess your progress. Perhaps a quarter of the waste material has been removed. The block is beginning to lose its harsh rectangular appearance. You can start to see the cylinder within, like a sculpture emerging from the raw stone. This is satisfying, this visible progress. It encourages you to continue. But you also notice something else. There is a thin crack in the stone, barely visible, running diagonally across one corner. You lean closer, peering at it in the candlelight. The crack is perhaps 6 inches long, a hairline fracture in the limestone. It might be a natural flaw, a stress line that formed when the stone was still in the earth. Or it might have been created by the quarrymen's tools when they were cutting the block. You touch the crack gently with your fingertip. It does not seem deep. You tap it lightly with the chisel. The sound is solid, not the hollow ring that would indicate a major fracture. This is probably a surface crack, annoying but not catastrophic. You will need to work around it, being careful not to strike too close to it, which might cause it to expand. If the crack does grow, it could ruin the block, making it unsuitable for use in the arcade. This is part of the unpredictability of working with stone. No matter how carefully the quarrymen select and cut the blocks, no matter how thoroughly you inspect them, there are always hidden flaws. The stone is ancient, subject to stresses and forces that have acted upon it over eons. Sometimes these internal tensions manifest only when you begin to cut, when the removal of surrounding material allows a crack to open. You make a mental note of the crack's location and continue working, but now with extra caution in that area. You choose your striking points carefully, keeping away from the fracture line. The work slows slightly, but this is necessary. Better to work slowly and preserve the stone than to work quickly and ruin it. The night deepens. The rain continues. Somewhere far away in the town below the cathedral, a church bell tolls the hour of Compline. The sound is faint, almost lost in the rain, but you hear it. The day is ending. Soon the other masons will retire to their homes or to the dormitory attached to the lodge. But you are not finished. You want to complete at least the roughing out of one side of the cylinder before you stop for the night. You pick up the mallet and chisel again. Your arms protest slightly. The muscles are warm and beginning to ache, but the discomfort is bearable, even pleasant in a way. It is the ache of honest labor, of your body being used for its intended purpose. You resume the rhythm. Strike, reposition, strike. The pile of chips grows, the dust thickens in the air. The candles burn lower. The world contracts to this single point of attention. The stone, the chisel, the mallet, your hands, the emerging form, nothing else matters. Gradually, over the course of another hour, the side of the block becomes rounded. The rough curve of the cylinder is now visible. It is not smooth or refined, but the basic shape is there. You run your hand over the surface, feeling the ridges and valleys left by the chisel. Under your palm, you can sense the form that will emerge with further work. The stone has begun its journey from earth to heaven, from quarry to cathedral. You set down your tools and allow yourself a moment of satisfaction. This is only the beginning, the roughest stage of the work, but it is progress. Tomorrow you will continue, refining the curve, smoothing the surface, eventually creating the perfect cylinder that the design requires. And after that, if your work proves worthy, Master Guillaume might allow you to attempt the carved capital, the decorated top with its lobes and leaves drawn from the flower of life. But that is for tomorrow and the days beyond. Tonight you have done enough. You are tired now, genuinely tired, the kind of deep physical weariness that comes from hours of focused labor. Your arms ache. Your back is stiff from standing. Your hands are cramped from gripping the tools. You begin the process of cleaning your workspace. This is as important as the work itself. A mason's bench must be kept orderly. You gather the larger chips of limestone and place them in a wooden box. These chips are not waste. They will be used by other craftsmen, crushed into powder for lime mortar, or used as aggregate in concrete. Nothing is wasted in the lodge. The finer dust you sweep into a pile with a small broom made of bundled twigs. This dust, too, has its uses. It can be mixed with water to create a paste for filling small gaps, or used by the painters who will eventually decorate the cathedral's interior. You cover your tools with a cloth to protect them from the dust that will continue to settle throughout the night. You bank the brazier near your bench, covering the coals with ash to preserve them until morning. You blow out the candles one by one, leaving only a single candle to light your way to the door. In the gathering darkness, you take one last look at the stone on your bench. Even in this dim light, you can see the change you have wrought. What was a blank rectangular block now shows the promise of becoming a pillar. The transformation has begun. You pull your wool cloak around your shoulders and step out into the night. The rain strikes your face, cold and clean. It washes away some of the stone dust that coats your skin. You stand for a moment in the darkness, letting the rain fall on you, looking up at the half-built cathedral looming above. The structure rises into the night sky, darker than the darkness, a mass of stone reaching upward. Parts of it are complete, showing the intended form. Other parts are still under construction, walls that end abruptly, arches that spring from pillars but do not yet meet in the middle. The whole edifice is held in a kind of suspension, a building caught between earth and sky, between intention and completion. Tomorrow you will return. You will pick up your chisel and mallet. You will continue the work of transformation, taking the rough block closer to its final form. And so it will go day after day, week after week, month after month. Your hands will shape this stone and dozens of others. Each one will become part of the cathedral, part of the structure that will stand for centuries. You are building for eternity. This is what Master Guillaume says. The cathedral will outlive you, outlive your children, outlive generations yet unborn. Long after your name is forgotten, the stones you carve will remain, holding up the roof, framing the windows through which colored light will pour, creating the sacred space where people will come to pray and to wonder. This thought is both humbling and exalting. Your life is brief, a flicker of candlelight in the vastness of time, but the work you do will endure. In shaping the stone, you are participating in something larger than yourself, something that connects you to the past and the future, to all the masons who have worked before you and all who will come after. The rain is soaking through your cloak now. You shake yourself from these thoughts and begin walking down the muddy path that leads from the lodge to the town. Your feet know the way even in darkness. You pass the piles of cut stone waiting to be shaped, the wooden scaffolding climbing the cathedral walls, the ox carts and tools and materials that fill the building site. At the gate of the cathedral close, you turn and look back one more time. The lodge is dark now, a low wooden building crouched against the stone wall of the cathedral. Inside, your bench waits. The stone waits. Tomorrow's work waits. But tonight you will sleep. You will rest your aching muscles. You will dream, perhaps, of geometric patterns, of circles and squares, of the perfect forms that exist in the mind of God. And in the morning, when you return to the lodge, when you uncover your tools and face the stone again, you will continue the endless, patient work of bringing those perfect forms into the imperfect material world. You will strike the chisel. The stone will yield. The cathedral will grow, one chip at a time, one pillar, one arch, one vault, until the day, years or decades hence, when the last stone is set and the building stands complete. This is your calling. This is your life. You are a mason, a shaper of stone, a builder of cathedrals. And tonight, as you walk through the rain towards sleep, you carry with you the taste of limestone dust and the memory of the stone's cold resistance under your hands. You carry the knowledge that tomorrow you will return and the work will continue. Always the work continues, patient and deliberate, transforming the earth into heaven, building for eternity. Morning comes slowly. The darkness thins gradually, becoming gray before becoming light. You wake on the narrow bed in the dormitory, your muscles stiff from yesterday's work. The other apprentices are still sleeping, bundled in their wool blankets against the autumn cold. You rise quietly, pulling on your work tunic and leather apron, and make your way down the wooden stairs. The rain has stopped. The world outside is still wet, dripping, but the sky is clearing in the east. Puddles reflect the pale dawn light. You cross the muddy courtyard toward the lodge, your breath visible in the cold air. Your body remembers yesterday's labor. Your shoulders are tight. Your forearms ache with a deep, pleasant soreness. This is the feeling of muscles that have been used fully, pushed to their limits, and now recovering, growing stronger. You push open the large door. Inside, the air is cold but still, undisturbed since you left last night. The stone dust has settled during the night, coating everything in a fresh layer of white. It is like walking into a world made of chalk. The benches, the tools, the floor, all covered in this fine powder. Your footsteps leave dark prints in the white dust on the floor. You go to your bench. The stone sits exactly as you left it, patient and unchanged. The rough cylinder shape you began yesterday is still visible in the early morning light, filtering through the gaps in the walls. You uncover your tools, shaking the cloth to remove the dust that has accumulated overnight. The chisels gleam dully. The mallet rests heavily in your hand when you pick it up. You are not ready to work yet. First, you must light a fire in the brazier. The cold makes the stone even harder, more resistant to the chisel. It also makes your hands stiff and clumsy. You need warmth before you can begin. You gather kindling from the barks near the door, arrange it in the brazier, and strike flint against steel. Sparks fall into the dry wood. You blow gently, encouraging the ember to grow into flame. Smoke rises, then the flames catch, and soon the brazier is burning steadily. You hold your hands over the fire, letting the heat penetrate your fingers, your palms, your wrists. The warmth travels up your arms. You flex your fingers, working out the stiffness. A mason's hands must be both strong and sensitive. You must be able to grip the mallet with force, but also to feel the subtle variations in the stone's surface, to detect the slight differences in texture that indicate where the stone will cut easily and where it will resist. Other apprentices begin arriving. They nod to you in greeting but do not speak. The early morning is a quiet time in the lodge. Each mason moves to his own bench and begins his own preparations. The sounds are soft, the scrape of tools being arranged, the rustle of covering cloths being removed, the crackle of other braziers being lit. Soon the lodge is warmer, filled with the smell of burning charcoal and the ancient scent of limestone. Master Guillaume arrives last, as always. He is an older man, perhaps 50 years old, his beard streaked with grey and white. He walks slowly along the length of the lodge, stopping at each bench to examine the work from the previous day. He says little, but his eyes miss nothing. He can see instantly if an angle is wrong, if a curve is imprecise, if the stone has been damaged by careless striking. He stops at your bench. You step back, allowing him to examine the roughed-out cylinder. He places his hand on the stone, feeling the surface you have created. He looks at the charcoal lines you drew, checking that you have stayed within the margins. He notices the hairline crack in one corner and traces it with his finger. Then he nods. Good, he says. Continue. Take it to the next stage today. Use the pitching tool for the heavy work, then move to the claw chisel for refining. Be mindful of that crack. Work around it, not toward it. This is high praise from Master Guillaume. He does not waste words. Good from him means the work is acceptable, that you are progressing as you should. You feel a warm satisfaction at his approval, but you do not let it show on your face. Pride is dangerous in a mason. It leads to carelessness, to overconfidence, to mistakes. Master Guillaume moves on to the next bench. You turn back to your stone. Today you will take the roughing work further. Yesterday, you used a wide, flat chisel to remove the initial waste material. Today you will use a different tool, one designed specifically for knocking off large corners and reducing the block more aggressively. This tool is called a pitching tool, sometimes called a pitcher. You select it from your tool rack. The pitching tool is heavier than a normal chisel, with a thick iron head and a cutting edge that is beveled on only one side. This single bevel design allows the tool to split off large chunks of stone rather than cutting thin slices. The tool is perhaps 8 inches long, with a wooden handle wrapped in leather for better grip. You position yourself at one corner of the block, where a large triangular section of waste stone still remains. This corner needs to be removed to continue revealing the cylinder underneath. You place the cutting edge of the pitching tool against the stone, positioning it carefully at the base of the waste section, angled to direct the force of the blow along the natural grain of the limestone. You raise the mallet high. This will be a strong strike, much harder than the controlled taps you used yesterday with the finer chisel. You bring the mallet down with force. The impact is solid, jarring. The sound is different too, a deep thud followed by a sharp crack. The waist corner does not break free on the first strike, but you can see a fracture line appear in the stone. You strike again. Thud. Crack. The fracture deepens. You adjust the position of the pitching tool slightly and strike a third time. This time, the corner breaks free completely. A large chunk of limestone, perhaps the size of two fists together, separates from the block and falls to the floor with a heavy thump. A cloud of white dust rises from the impact point. This is satisfying work, this rough reduction. There is something primal about it, about using force to break away large sections of stone. It requires strength, but also precision. You must know exactly where to place the pitching tool, exactly how hard to strike. Too weak a blow and nothing happens. Too strong or aimed incorrectly, and you risk cracking the stone in ways you do not intend. You move around the block, systematically removing the corners. Thud, crack, thud, crack. The rhythm is slower than yesterday's work but more forceful. Each strike reverberates through your arms, through your body, through the floor. The sound fills the lodge. Other masons are doing similar work at their benches, and the building echoes with the percussion of iron against stone. Chunks of limestone accumulate around your bench. Some are large and angular, showing the natural cleaving planes of the stone. Others are smaller, irregular fragments. All of them are white or pale gray, and all of them are coated in the dust that rises with each strike. The air around your bench becomes thick with this dust. It swirls in the shafts of morning light coming through the wall gaps. You breathe it in with every breath. The physical exertion warms you. Despite the cold morning air, you are soon sweating under your wool tunic. Your muscles burn with the repeated striking. The mallet grows heavy in your hand after a while, and you must concentrate to maintain your precision. But you do not stop. The work has its own momentum. Once begun, it pulls you forward, demanding completion. After perhaps an hour of this heavy work, you pause to assess your progress. The block has lost all of its sharp rectangular corners. It is now roughly octagonal in cross-section, an eight-sided approximation of the circular cylinder you are creating. The waste material has been removed down close to the charcoal lines you drew. You have perhaps half an inch of margin remaining, a safety buffer that you will remove in the next stages of work. You set down the pitching tool and pick up a water skin hanging from a peg on the wall. You take a long drink. The water tastes of the leather skin and of limestone dust. You pour some water over your hands, washing away some of the accumulated white powder, though it immediately begins to coat your skin again. You flex your fingers, working out the stiffness from gripping the tools. You roll your shoulders, feeling the tightness in the muscles. This is demanding work, not just in the moment of striking, but in the cumulative effect of thousands of impacts over hours and days. Your body is being shaped by this labor just as surely as the stone is being shaped. Your muscles are adapting, growing denser and stronger. Your bones are thickening where the stress is greatest. You are becoming a tool yourself, a human instrument designed for the specific purpose of carving stone. Master Guillaume appears at your bench again. He examines the octagonal form you have created, running his hand over the surface, checking the straightness of the lines, the evenness of the reduction. He takes a string from his pocket and stretches it along the length of the block, checking for any bowing or deviation from true vertical. The string lies straight. The form is accurate. Now refine it, he says. Take it from 8 sides to 16, then to smooth. Use the claw chisel. Keep your strokes even and overlapping. The surface should have a uniform texture when you finish this stage. He moves on. You understand what he wants. The next stage is to refine the rough octagon into a smoother approximation of a circle. Instead of 8 flat sides, you will create 16, then 32, until the facets are so small and numerous that the surface appears smoothly curved, even though it is technically still a series of flat planes. For this work, you need a different tool. You select the claw chisel from your rack. This chisel has a cutting edge that is not smooth but serrated, divided into several parallel teeth like a comb. When dragged across the stone, it cuts multiple parallel grooves simultaneously, creating a textured surface. This texture serves two purposes. First, it removes material more efficiently than a smooth chisel. Second, it creates a uniform surface that makes it easier to judge your progress and to see where more material needs to be removed. You position the claw chisel against one of the 8 flat sides of the octagon at the top of the block. You angle it slightly and strike with the mallet. The teeth bite into the stone. You strike again, moving the chisel down slightly with each blow, dragging it across the surface. The sound is different from the pitching tool. Instead of the sharp crack of stone breaking, there is a scratchy, rasping sound. Rasp, rasp, rasp. The chisel is tearing through the limestone, leaving behind a series of parallel grooves. You work your way down the length of one face, creating a band of grooved texture. The white stone shows the marks clearly, the grooves catching shadow and light. Then you move the chisel slightly to one side and make another pass, overlapping the first by about half. The grooves merge into a uniform texture. Slowly, stroke by stroke, you cover the entire face with this pattern. The work requires concentration. Each stroke of the claw chisel must overlap the previous one correctly. If you miss an area, it creates a visible patch. If you strike too hard, the teeth dig too deep and create an irregular surface. If you strike too lightly, the chisel skitters across the hard stone without cutting. You must find the right pressure, the right angle, the right rhythm. Rasp, rasp, rasp. The sound becomes hypnotic. Your arm moves in a steady cadence. Strike, drag, reposition. Strike, drag, reposition. The mallet rises and falls. The chisel moves across the stone. Your breathing synchronizes with the rhythm. You are not thinking about the individual strokes anymore. Your body has learned the pattern. Your muscles remember. You are operating in a state somewhere between conscious control and automatic action. The morning passes. The light through the wall gaps changes angle as the sun rises higher. The large grows warmer as more braziers are lit, and as the body heat of working masons fills the space. The dust thickens in the air. Every bench is surrounded by a cloud of white particles. When you look down the length of the large, you see your fellow apprentices and journeymen as ghostly figures moving in the haze, visible mainly by the rhythmic motion of their arms rising and falling. By midday, you have textured all 8 faces of the octagon. The block is now covered in parallel grooves, a uniform pattern that gives it a strange, organic appearance, like the bark of a tree or the scales of a fish. You step back and examine your work. The octagonal shape is clear, but the grooved texture softens the hard edges. The stone looks somehow more alive, more responsive to light. You are hungry and tired. The apprentices break for a meal at noon, walking to the refectory attached to the lodge. There is bread and cheese and weak beer. You eat quickly, saying little, sitting with the other young masons. The conversation around you is technical. Someone is having trouble with a difficult piece of tracery. Someone else has discovered a hidden void in a block of marble. A journeyman is explaining a technique for carving deeply undercut leaves. You listen but do not contribute. You are still too junior to offer opinions. You are still learning, but you absorb the knowledge being shared. This is how the craft is transmitted, not just through formal instruction from masters to apprentices, but through these casual conversations, these exchanges of techniques and warnings and solutions. After perhaps half an hour, you return to the lodge. Your muscles have stiffened during the break. You must work them loose again, flexing and stretching before you pick up your tools. This is important. Cold muscles are vulnerable to injury. You must ease back into the work gradually. You return to the claw chisel. Now your task is to remove the hard edges between the 8 faces, transforming the octagon into a 16-sided figure. You work at the corners, the places where 2 grooved faces meet at an angle. The claw chisel rasps across these edges, rounding them, removing the sharpness. Slowly, the corners disappear. The 8 faces become 16 narrower faces. The cross-section of the block is becoming more circular. This work continues through the afternoon. Rasp, rasp, rasp. The rhythm never changes. Your arm continues its steady motion. More dust rises. More stone is removed. The pile of chips and fragments around your bench grows deeper. You are standing in a layer of limestone waste that is now several inches thick. It crunches under your feet when you shift position. The light begins to fade. Through the gaps in the walls, you can see that clouds are gathering again. The brightness of midday is gone, replaced by a grey, heavy sky. More rain is coming. But inside the lodge, the work continues. Candles are lit. The braziers are fed more fuel. The masons work into the evening, driven by the pressure of the building season. Winter is approaching. Soon the weather will make outdoor construction impossible. Every day counts. Every stone must be prepared while there is still time. You continue refining the cylinder. The 16 faces become 32. The 32 becomes 64. The surface is approaching true roundness. You can run your hand around the circumference now and feel only a slight polygonal character, the faintest suggestion of facets. To an untrained eye, it would appear smooth, but you can see and feel the work that remains. Master Guillaume stops by again as the evening deepens. He has a tool with him, a gauge made of thin wood bent into a perfect circle and held by iron bands. This gauge matches the diameter specified in the design. He holds it against your cylinder, checking the fit. The stone passes through the gauge smoothly at some points, but catches at others. You have taken too much material from some areas and not enough from others. The cylinder is not perfectly round. See here, Master Guillaume says, pointing to a place where the stone catches against the gauge. This section is still too wide. Take more from this quadrant. And here, he points to another area, you have cut too aggressively. The diameter is too small. This cannot be corrected now. You must ensure the rest of the piece matches this minimum diameter. You nod, absorbing the criticism without defensiveness. This is how you learn. Master Guillaume is not being harsh. He is teaching you to see what your eyes alone cannot yet detect, to understand the precision required for work that will bear structural weight in the cathedral. An uneven cylinder could create stress points. It could crack under load. It could fail. He leaves you to make the corrections. You pick up the claw chisel again and focus on the areas he indicated. You work carefully now, taking very small amounts of material with each stroke. You check constantly with your hands, feeling for the subtle variations in diameter. Slowly, the cylinder becomes more uniform. The gauge passes over it more smoothly. But you are tiring now. The day has been long and the work demanding. Your arms are heavy. The mallet feels like it weighs twice as much as it did this morning. Your shoulders burn with fatigue. Your back aches from standing in the same position for hours. You know you should stop, should rest, should leave the work for tomorrow. But there is a satisfaction in continuing, in pushing through the fatigue, in feeling your will impose itself on your body's desire to stop. You work for another hour as the evening deepens into night. The rain begins again, a soft pattering on the roof that gradually builds into a steady drumming. The temperature drops. The brazier fire does little to warm the drafty lodge. You can see your breath when you exhale, but the physical labor keeps you warm enough. Your body is generating heat from the work itself. Finally, you set down the tools. The cylinder is complete, at least in its rough form. The surface is uniformly textured with the marks of the claw chisel, and the diameter is consistent along the entire length. Tomorrow, or in the days to come, you will smooth this surface with finer chisels and eventually with abrasive stones. But tonight, this is enough. You look at what you have created. Yesterday morning, this was a rectangular block, inert and undefined. Now it is a cylinder, a form with purpose and direction. The transformation is visible, undeniable. The stone has been shaped by your hands, by your strength, by your patient attention. This feels important, significant in a way that is hard to articulate. You have taken raw material and imposed order upon it. You have participated in the act of creation. But the cylinder is not finished. There is still the capital to carve, the decorated top with its lobes and leaves. This is the detail work, the part that requires not just strength and stamina, but also delicacy and artistic vision. This is the part you have been looking forward to, the part that will test whether you have the skill to move beyond rough shaping into true masonry. Master Guillaume has told you that you can attempt this work. He would not have said so if he did not believe you were ready. But he has also warned you that detail carving is where most apprentices fail their first attempts. It is easy to be too aggressive, to cut too deeply and ruin the design. It is easy to be too timid, to barely mark the surface and create forms that lack definition. Finding the balance requires experience, sensitivity, a kind of dialogue with the stone. You cover your tools for the night, but you do not leave the lodge yet. Instead, you go to Master Guillaume's drafting table to study the design for the capital once more. The white plaster surface is covered with scratched lines showing the full-scale pattern. You trace the lines with your eyes, memorizing the curves, the proportions, the relationship between the geometric circles and the organic leaf forms. The capital design is based on 8 lobes arranged in a circle, each lobe corresponding to a petal in the flower of life pattern. Between the lobes, carved leaves emerge, their tips pointing upward. The leaves are stylized, not realistic representations, but abstracted forms that suggest vegetation without depicting any specific plant. This is the tradition in cathedral carving. The natural world is referenced but not copied. Everything is filtered through geometry, through the ordering principles that govern both nature and architecture. You take a small piece of charcoal and a scrap of wood. You practice drawing the leaf form, trying to capture the essential curve, the way the leaf narrows at the base and widens in the middle before tapering to a point at the tip. You draw it several times, adjusting the proportions, seeking the line that feels right. This preparatory work is important. You must have the form clear in your mind before you approach the stone. After perhaps 20 minutes of this practice, you feel ready. Not confident, but ready. There is a difference. Confidence might lead to carelessness. Readiness is a state of prepared alertness, of knowing that you have done what you can to prepare and must now trust your hands to execute what your mind has planned. You return to your bench. You select a small, pointed chisel for the detail work. This chisel is perhaps half an inch wide at the cutting edge, tapering to a point. It is designed for carving fine lines and creating definition in tight spaces. The edge is extremely sharp. You tested it this morning on a scrap of wood, and it cut the soft timber like butter. Limestone is harder than wood, but a sharp chisel will still cut it cleanly if you work carefully. You have already marked the positions of the 8 lobes on the top surface of the cylinder using the compass and charcoal. Now you need to begin carving one of the leaves that will emerge between the lobes. You select one position and mark the outline of the leaf with charcoal, drawing freehand but guided by the proportions you practiced on the scrap wood. The leaf form is perhaps 4 inches long and 2 inches wide at its broadest point. It will be carved in shallow relief, standing perhaps a quarter-inch proud of the background. This is not deep carving, but it requires precision. The background around the leaf must be cut away evenly, and the leaf itself must have subtle modeling to give it depth and life. You place the point of the chisel at the edge of the charcoal outline. You raise the mallet, but now your motion is completely different from the heavy striking you used earlier. For detail work, the mallet taps gently. The sound changes from the heavy thud or harsh rasp of roughing work to a delicate tinking sound. Tink, tink, tink. Each tap is light and controlled. The chisel point bites into the stone, creating a shallow groove along the outline. You work slowly, following the curve of the leaf shape. The limestone resists, but the sharp chisel and careful tapping overcome the resistance. A thin line appears in the white stone, darker where the chisel has compressed and fractured the surface. You work your way around the entire outline of the leaf, creating a boundary between the form you want to preserve and the background you will cut away. This outlining is critical. It defines the shape. Any wavering of the line, any deviation from the intended curve will be visible in the final carving. The work requires intense concentration. You lean close to the stone, your face sometimes only inches from the surface. You blow frequently on the work area, clearing away the fine dust that accumulates and obscures your view. With each breath, a small cloud of white particles rises and disperses, revealing the line you have cut. After outlining the leaf, you switch to a slightly wider chisel and begin removing the background around it. You must cut away perhaps a quarter-inch of stone from all the area surrounding the leaf, lowering the background so that the leaf form stands in relief. This removal must be done carefully and evenly. If you cut too deep in some areas and not deep enough in others, the background will be uneven and the leaf will appear to float awkwardly above it. Tink, tink, tink. You work in small sections, removing the background in layers. Each layer is perhaps a 1/16 of an inch deep. You work patiently, checking constantly with your fingers, feeling for the depth and evenness of the cut. Your fingertips are extremely sensitive now, trained by years of touching stone. They can detect variations in height that your eyes cannot see in the uncertain light. The leaf begins to emerge. As the background lowers around it, the form becomes three-dimensional. What was a flat outline becomes a shape with presence, with volume. This is the magic of carving, this moment when the design leaves the realm of the theoretical and enters the physical world. The leaf is becoming real. But it is not finished. The leaf itself needs modeling. It cannot simply stand as a flat silhouette. It must have depth, contour, the suggestion of natural form. You select an even smaller chisel, one with a curved cutting edge. With this tool, you can create the gentle convex curve of the leaf's upper surface. You work from the edges of the leaf toward the center, creating a subtle rise. Each stroke of the chisel removes a thin slice of stone. The tinking sound continues, gentle and rhythmic. Your hand is completely steady now, guided by the focused attention you are bringing to the work. There is no room for distraction, for wandering thoughts. The chisel is sharp enough to cut you if it slips. The stone is unforgiving. You must be completely present. The leaf takes shape. Its edges are crisp where they meet the background. Its surface is gently curved, catching the candlelight and creating a soft shadow along one side. At the base of the leaf, where it would attach to a stem, you carve a small notch, a detail that gives the form specificity and character. You step back to examine your work. The leaf is perhaps 3 inches long now, smaller than you originally planned because you discovered a harder section of stone and had to adjust the design slightly. But it is well formed. The proportions are good. The carving is crisp and clear. Master Guillaume will be able to find faults, certainly, but you are satisfied that you have done your best work. You realize you are exhausted. The detail carving has required a different kind of energy than the roughing work, a mental rather than purely physical exertion. Your eyes are tired from focusing on small details in dim light. Your hands are cramping from the delicate control required. You need to stop. You set down your tools and walk to the door of the lodge. You push it open and step outside into the night. The rain is falling steadily, heavy drops that strike your face and shoulders. You stand in the darkness, letting the rain wash over you. The cold water is shocking at first, then refreshing. It clears your head, washes away some of the dust that coats your skin and hair. You look up at the cathedral rising above you. Lightning flashes in the distance, illuminating the structure for a brief moment. In that flash of light, you see the half-built cathedral in its skeletal form. The walls rise in tiers, the arches spring from their pillars, and above it all, the ribbed vaults of the nave are exposed, looking like the bones of some enormous creature. The ribs curve upward and meet at the apex, creating pointed arches that divide the space into geometric bays. The lightning flashes again. This time you see the flying buttresses, those external supports that push against the walls from outside, transferring the lateral thrust of the vaults down into the ground. They look like the legs of a giant insect, or like arms reaching up to hold the building in place. The whole structure seems alive in the flickering light, organic despite being made of stone. Thunder rolls across the sky, a deep rumbling that you feel in your chest. The rain intensifies. You should go inside, should seek shelter. But you stand for another moment, transfixed by the sight of the cathedral. This is what you are building. This is what all the dust and labor and patience is for. Not just individual stones, not just pillars and arches, but this vast structure, this attempt to create a space that lifts the human spirit toward the divine. You think about all the masons working on this project, the dozens of men who spend their days shaping stone. Each one is responsible for individual pieces, for particular pillars or sections of wall or carved capitals. But no one can see the whole. The cathedral exists as a complete form only in the mind of the master architect and in the designs drawn on the tracing floor. The rest of you work in faith, trusting that when all the pieces come together, they will form something magnificent. Your carved leaf will be part of this. It will be one tiny detail among thousands, set high on a pillar where few will ever see it clearly. But it will be there. Long after you are dead, long after everyone who knows your name has been forgotten, that leaf will remain, carved into the limestone, part of the eternal structure. This thought brings you back to something Master Guillaume spoke about recently. He gathered the apprentices one evening and talked about the mason's mark, the personal symbol that each craftsman carves into his work. The mark serves a practical purpose. It allows the master mason to track who carved which stones, which is necessary for calculating payment. But it also serves a deeper purpose. It is a signature, a way of saying, I was here, I did this work. You have not yet chosen your own mark. Apprentices do not usually mark their work until they become journeymen, but you have been thinking about it. The mark must be simple, easily carved, and unique to you. It should be geometric rather than pictorial. Master Guillaume's mark is a circle with a diagonal line through it. Another journeyman uses two interlocking squares. A third has a triangle with a dot in the center. You have been considering a mark based on the compass rose, a simple cross with 4 points. It would be easy to carve and would represent the cardinal directions, the ordering of space that is so fundamental to the mason's work. But you have not committed to this yet. Choosing your mark feels like a significant decision, one that should not be rushed. You turn and go back inside the lodge. The warmth hits you immediately, a welcome contrast to the cold rain. You are soaked now, your tunic clinging to your skin, water dripping from your hair. You go to the brazier and stand close to it, letting the heat begin to dry your clothes and warm your chilled body. The lodge is quiet now. Most of the other masons have left for the night. Only a few remain, finishing their work or, like you, too absorbed in the craft to leave. Their benches glow with candlelight, small islands of illumination in the long, dim space. The sound of their work is gentle. Tink, 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 the soft percussion of detail carving. You should leave. You should go to the dormitory, eat some bread and sleep. Tomorrow will bring another long day of work. But you are drawn back to your bench, to the stone with its emerging leaf. You want to carve just one more detail, to add the veining on the leaf surface, the suggestion of natural structure. You pick up the smallest chisel you own, a tool with a cutting edge barely wider than a nail. You light fresh candles around your bench, positioning them to eliminate shadows. Then you lean close to the carved leaf and begin the most delicate work of all. The veining must be subtle. If carved too deeply, it will look harsh and unnatural. If too shallow, it will be invisible and pointless. You place the chisel point on the stone and tap very gently with the mallet. The lightest possible strike. Tink. A tiny groove appears in the surface of the leaf. You move the chisel and tap again. Another tiny groove. Slowly, a pattern of radiating lines emerges, suggesting the structure of a real leaf without depicting it literally. This work is meditative in a way that even the earlier carving was not. You are operating at the absolute limit of precision. Each tap of the mallet must be controlled. Your breathing affects your steadiness, so you breathe slowly and evenly. Your heartbeat affects the trembling of your hands, so you wait for the moment between beats to strike. The world contracts to an even smaller point than before. Not just the stone, not just the leaf, but this single vein you are carving, this line that is perhaps 2 inches long and a hair's width deep. Nothing else exists. There is no large, no rain, no cathedral. There is only the chisel and the stone and your absolute attention. Time becomes meaningless. You might be working for 5 minutes or for an hour. You have no sense of it passing. You exist in an eternal present, the now of the chisel striking the stone, the now of the groove appearing, the now of moving to the next position. Finally, you complete the veining. You set down the chisel and mallet. You blow gently on the leaf, clearing away the fine dust. The carved form is revealed in the candlelight, and it is beautiful, not perfect. You can see places where the lines could be finer, where the curves could be more elegant. But it is beautiful nonetheless. It has the quality of life, of organic form captured in inorganic stone. You allow yourself a moment of satisfaction. Then you cover the work with a cloth to protect it from the dust that will accumulate overnight. You clean your tools and store them carefully. You bank the brazier fire. You gather your wet cloak from where you dropped it near the door. Before you leave, you take one more walk through the lodge. Most of the benches are empty now, their tools covered, their stones waiting in silent patience for tomorrow. But at the far end, one old journeyman is still working. You do not know his name. He keeps to himself, speaks to no one. But you have watched him work sometimes, admiring his skill. Tonight he is carving a capital for one of the main pillars of the nave, a large piece that will be visible from the floor of the cathedral. The design is complex, involving acanthus leaves and scrollwork. His hands move with absolute certainty. Every stroke of his chisel is precise. He works without hesitation, without doubt. This is what mastery looks like. This is what you aspire to. You watch him for a few minutes, and he seems to sense your presence. He looks up, makes eye contact, nods slightly. Then he returns to his work. No words are exchanged. None are needed. You are both masons. You both serve the stone. You both contribute to the cathedral. That shared purpose is enough. You leave the lodge and step out into the night. The rain has stopped. The clouds are breaking apart, and between them, stars are visible. The sky is clearing. Tomorrow might be a good day for outdoor work. The setters might be able to place some of the stones that are ready, lifting them into position with the great wooden cranes and fitting them into the growing walls. Your part in this is small but necessary. The pillar you are carving will be one of dozens in the arcade, but each pillar is essential. Remove any one of them and the structure fails. The weight distribution depends on every element being in place, being precisely shaped and positioned. Your carved leaf might be a tiny detail, but it is part of the whole, integrated into the great geometric pattern that is the cathedral. You cross the muddy courtyard toward the dormitory. Your feet are heavy. Your body is calling for sleep, but your mind is still alert, still processing the day's work, still seeing the stone and the chisel and the emerging forms. You reach the dormitory and climb the stairs. The other apprentices are already asleep, their breathing slow and regular. You remove your wet clothes and hang them on a peg to dry. You lie down on your narrow bed, pulling the wool blanket over you. The room is dark and cold, but you are not cold. The work has left a warmth in your muscles, a deep heat that radiates from within. You close your eyes and see, imprinted on your inner vision, the pattern of circles from the flower of life, the curve of the carved leaf, the texture of the claw chisel marks on the cylinder. You think about the stone waiting on your bench. Tomorrow you will continue the work. You will carve more leaves, refine the background, smooth the surfaces. Day by day, the capital will take shape. Eventually, it will be complete, and it will be lifted from your bench and carried out to the cathedral. It will be set in place atop the pillar shaft. It will bear its share of the weight. It will stand for centuries. Sleep begins to take you. Your thoughts become less focused, drifting into the territory between waking and dreaming. You see the cathedral in your mind, but now it is complete. The walls rise to their full height. The vaults are closed. The roof is in place. Light pours through the windows, colored light that paints the stone floors with patterns of red and blue and gold. People move through the space, tiny figures dwarfed by the scale of the building. They look up at the arches, the vaults, the pillars. They cannot see the individual mason's marks hidden in the stone. They cannot distinguish one carved leaf from another. But they feel the effect of all this work, the cumulative result of thousands of hours of patient carving. They feel uplifted. They feel the sacred quality of the space. This is why you do the work. Not for recognition, not for individual glory, but to contribute to something larger than yourself, something that will endure and serve and inspire long after you are gone. Your breathing slows, your muscles relax. The ache in your arms and shoulders fades into a general sense of pleasant weariness. Outside, the clouds continue to clear. Moonlight begins to shine through the small window near your bed, casting a pale rectangle of light on the floor. In the lodge across the courtyard, the dust is settling. It falls slowly through the still air, coating the benches, the tools, the stones. It looks like snow in the moonlight, transforming the workspace into a quiet, peaceful landscape. The stone on your bench sits in this white dust, patient and unchanging, waiting for your return. The cathedral rises above it all, the skeletal structure standing against the night sky. The stones that have been set are solid and permanent. The stones still being carved rest in the large potential waiting to be realized. The stones still in the quarry sleep in the earth, not yet called to service. It is all connected. The earth, the stone, the masons, the tools, the geometry, the cathedral. An unbroken chain of transformation from raw material to sacred space. And you are a link in that chain, a necessary part of the process. And as the dust settles in the moonlight and the great cathedral watches over the town, the stone stands silent and strong. The work is done, and you are safe. Sleep well.